What's going on, boxing fans? It's Julian Williams with The Distance. I'm here for another video. And this one is on the heavyweight division. A lot of people have something to say about it. My boy Boxing Fan 4 had his video on it. A lot of the columnists, journalists, boxing writers, whatever, have their own opinion on the heavyweight division. I'm just going to give my thoughts on the heavyweight division and how I see the heavyweight division. See, one problem with the heavyweight division is that more than likely we're not going to find out who's number one until either one of the brothers who is Vladimir and Vitaly Klitschko, who hold title belts. When one of the brothers either loses the belt and another one of the brothers fights that guy who defeats him or whatever. But we're not going to have a glimpse of who's number one due to the fact that the brothers will never fight each other. And basically we have a champion, the number one heavyweight fighter, who's Vladimir Klitschko. He's the number one fighter pretty much by default. One, because he held the title the longest. Two, he has the most belts. And three, he's pretty much on a big winning streak. Any other heavyweight, in the division now, whether it be a contender or prospect, at least have one loss. Devin Vargas was considered a pretty decent prospect last year, lost to Kevin Kingpin Johnson. Kevin Kingpin Johnson 2 years ago, there were actually people saying that he could possibly beat beat Vladimir, which I doubt. But I thought personally, I did myself thought that Kevin Johnson could have given Vitaly trouble because he was slick. But we saw what happened in that fight. He didn't do anything, so he's being swarmed in that fight. But honestly, to be quite honest, I think that's the only problem in the division, is that we can't determine a number one fighter when number one and number two won't fight each other. And number three in the division, who is David Haye, technically, because he has a WBA heavyweight championship belt, he's number three technically because he holds on to that title. But the brothers hold on to the other belts. So, but at the same time, 1 and 2 will not fight each other. So that's going to leave a void in that division. 2 and 3 could fight each other, but say 2 beats 3, 1 and 2 will never face each other. And that's pretty much the main problem with the division. Do I have a problem with the fighting style of the Klitschkos? Not at all. I don't find their fighting style to necessarily be boring. It's quite entertaining to me to see a masterful performance of somebody who could control the pace of a fight and utilize their skill to win all 12 rounds or possibly get the knockout towards the end. I do think it's fascinating. And also I think it's fascinating that two brothers are holding the heavyweight championship belts. I believe that's quite fascinating as well. But the only thing that really bothers me though is that there are no heavyweight fighters that are being built up to not to become better boxers, but now these fighters are being built up to fight Klitschko's. That I believe is one of the main problems in the heavyweight division. And see, another problem is now with these contenders, the contenders don't really have the opposition that could prepare them for the Klitschko's. Unlike what the Klitschko's had when they were coming up. When Vitaly was coming up, the heavyweight division was very decent. When Vladimir was coming up, the heavyweight division was very decent. There was decent contenders and opponents for them to face that could bring them up to this hierarchy level that they're on now. See, I guess that's pretty much the advantage that both fighters had. They did have better opposition coming up than a lot of these younger fighters. Instead of building up these younger fighters to fight Klitschko's, the younger fighters such as Cristobal Arreola or Eddie Chambers. And Eddie Chambers, I did think was best suited to fight one of the Klitschko's due to his competition, the competition that he faced. I did think that Eddie Chambers, out of all the opponents that the Klitschko's have faced, was probably the most viable opponent because of the opposition he faced. And now you don't have heavyweights that are being brought up like a Ali or not necessarily Ali, but like a Mike Tyson or say Evander Holyfield or any other champion of the 90s like Lennox Lewis, who's fighting guys like Frank Bruno and Oliver McCall or whoever else. there was really no competition for these young contenders. So now the contenders have to fight each other. And honestly, to be quite honest, I do think that in the heavyweight division, the Klitschko's are good for the heavyweight division. Though not in the United States are they marketable or profitable or whatever. They pretty much, if say the Klitschko's are gone today, say both of them just take the belts and say fuck it, we're done with boxing, what would happen to the heavyweight division? Do you think Eddie Chambers and Cristobal Arreola are going to fight each other? I doubt. They're pretty much under the same promoter, and pretty much I do think that maybe they could build up a fight between them, but it won't be for another 2 years maybe. The only marketable name may be David Haye, because let's face it, he's a knockout puncher. So I think that he'll be a viable name if the Klitschko's retired today. But at the same time, it takes away the intrigue of the heavyweight division. People are interested in watching the Klitschko's fight, whether it be a boring fight or not. People are interested in watching them fight. People are interested in seeing what happens when they fight. Even though people are saying, wow, they're robotic, wow, they do the same thing every fight, whatever. But, we have to face it. Vladimir is in for a long reign as the heavyweight champion. And Vili, I do think his days are numbered. I think after this year he's going to retire. More than likely, I think Vili is going to retire as champion. But I think Vladimir is going to retire. I really don't think Vladimir is going to retire on top. I think he's too much of a fighting champion to retire as champion. Unless the heavyweight division completely goes to shit and say he's about 40, 50 years old and still nothing's happening. I think, honestly, the problem with the heavyweight division is not necessarily the fighters, but the networks and the promoters who are willing to air these fights and aren't willing to try to build up a fighter to not only make them become better fighters, but now they're being built up to fight Klitschko brothers. I think that's the main problem, is the promoters and the networks who are pretty much out there trying to throwing these guys in the ring with both these brothers who are great boxers and masterful fighters. So honestly, the comparisons to the past heavyweights are very... Right now, the comparison to the past heavyweights like a Larry Holmes and Muhammad Ali is irrelevant right now, because the Klitschko's aren't facing the competition that these guys have faced, and they don't have the luxury of facing that competition, unfortunately. So I do believe that the comparisons are a bit irrelevant, but it's not taken away from the Klitschko's. They're great boxers. I'll admit, I used to not like the Klitschko's, but I got to the point where I appreciate the craft and the artisan of, pretty much the sweet science that they master. So, anyway, that's just my thoughts on the heavyweight division. I believe that the Klitschko's are great for the division because it does bring intrigue to the division. So, anyway, that was Distance. Thanks for watching.